No, I don't want to go. I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome.
The canceled buses. Yeah.
Well, just having you drop off and you go, you're in.
Okay.
It's always crazy.
Wonder if this just picked it up.
I'm gonna be driving.
You don't think so?
Well, not like Bluetooth. But it catches all.
Yeah.
All right,
Am I advancing you?
Savannah
Okay.
or Brianna.
We're on.
All right, for those of you who just came in, I'm Jeff Thompson, I'm the social worker at Spring Mills Elementary School. And when they decided to do this, they kind of threw out, anyone have any ideas on what kind of topics to talk about? And this one immediately popped into my head. This one is kind of like a driver to everything, if you ask me. So I'm hoping that you're gonna leave looking at anxiety a little differently. And also, I want you to have something tangible that maybe you can use. Because I imagine if you're here, there's good reason for it. You guys agree? Yeah. All right, so I thought I'd set the table with just kind of some basic demographics about anxiety. It's the most common mental health issue in the world. Since 2020, it's particularly affected teenagers and young adults. And probably us adults. And I don't know anyone who's not been affected since the pandemic, right? And all the changes we've gone through, world news. You can see in the United States, they estimate 4.4 million children ages 3 through 17 are diagnosed with anxiety. Massive correlation of anxiety and depression, over 78%. So if somebody's struggling with anxiety, good chance that they're struggling with depression. Anxiety is very prevalent in people with autism. I threw that one in. I have a child who's now 21 with autism, and my goodness, can he get disabled by anxiety? Women. There's a few in here. You can stand back. I threw this in the front part because as we get into this further, it kept showing up that women struggle with anxiety more than men. And so I was like, why is that? Being the curious person that I am, I had to look it up. And this is what they came up with. Women may struggle more with anxiety due to differences with brain chemistry and hormone fluctuation.
There might be more to it.
There might be more, and we'll see, okay? So I was just curious how that would be received. All right, don't flip it yet, Finn. All right, test. All right, when you hear the word anxiety, what is something that pops into your mind? Like, how would you define anxiety? Anxiety is like this big, massive thing, right? There's so many different ways it manifests. What's some ideas that you have or have seen or experienced?
I noticed that your ribs hurt, there's a tightness in your chest.
So tightness in your chest. So thank you for saying that, because I want to make sure when you leave here that you think of anxiety, body, mind. So many times people go to therapy, and in the olden days, therapy always focused on the mind and thought you could go top down, when really we're learning you go bottom up. And the trauma and stuff can get trapped in the body. All right, any other thoughts when anxiety pops up?
The inability to focus or quickly prioritize the many, many things that they're trying to handle.
So can you say that again?
Inability to focus or prioritize what next when you're trying to handle so many things.
So when you're anxious, your ability to think does what?
Drops.
It drops. And I'm going to try to explain when I get to my neuro nerd portion of this presentation about the brain, about why that happens when we get anxious. Have any of you ever had to get up in front of a group or take a test and thought I got this, and then bingo, in that moment, you freeze and forget it all. Not a good thing, is it? Okay, Vanna. So, once again, I'm the curious type. Look for how would they define, because I thought of anxiety, I thought of it like a big part is fear of the future. Fear of some horrible event that is going to come. When I work with kids in elementary school, and they're anxious, usually I kind of get from them and they think this horrible event is going to happen, right? So it changes their behavior, and we'll get to some of that stuff, that what we do, the cycle of anxiety. So the American Psychological Association defines anxiety as an emotion characterized by a feeling of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes that increase your blood pressure. Anyone here ever think of anxiety and think of that?
Yep.
Maybe the blood pressure, yeah.
Okay. But what I did like about it, it did talk about the body. Because the physical symptoms of anxiety can be pretty disturbing when they hit us, and they hit us hard. So the main types of anxiety, if any of you ever go to a therapist or take your child to a therapist and you have anxiety, a lot of times it will get diagnosed as just like generalized anxiety. Sometimes when we're anxious, we have no idea even why we're anxious. Sometimes we have these things called nonverbal memories of events that are triggered by sensory information. If you've ever been traumatized or something bad in your life, your brain will store what maybe it smelled like and what it felt like, tasted like. And sometimes then you can be walking, no anxiety, and bingo, you start getting anxiety, you have no idea why. Second one, panic disorder. Okay, this is where I might get into trouble. It said women are twice as likely to be affected, so this is one of those things that made me think that men just don't pay attention to things or what's going on here. It could be very well true. I'm a man, and I don't know if I pay attention to things. Okay, panic disorder. Any of you ever know anyone who's ever suffered from panic disorder? When you're talking about the tightness of the chest, I know people who have panic disorders literally thought they had heart attacks.
Yeah, my daughter, I have twins, and 3 males.
Okay.
And one of them has changed drastically since COVID. And she went to school last week, but she wanted to come home with because she's like, my chest hurts and I can't breathe. But she has really bad anxiety. And her school, her learning went down all since COVID started. So she's been to urgent care, hospitals, doctors multiple times because she thinks she's dying. But it's so tight in here and she feels like she can't breathe. She's having a panic attack. And she's only 8.
So you and I should probably chat when this is done.
I think I have an appointment with her on Monday.
I'm sorry. After today, you're going to say, I'm removing my child from this school. Okay. Social anxiety disorder affects 15 million adults, men and women equally, and that typically starts developing around puberty. Specific phobias. Okay, my knucklehead parent event. Okay, specific phobia is when there's something in particular you're scared of. So my daughter was probably sometime in elementary school, we watched Arachnophobia. I thought she could handle it. It's kind of a comedy. I hadn't seen it since it was out. Apparently, I forgot some things. So to this day, she's 19 and a half, and she sees a spider, she screams. And she still holds it against me. And I'm like, Molly, size difference, you're a lot bigger than that spider. It doesn't matter. It's your fault. Okay, separation anxiety, we see that a lot in the beginning of the school year. Kids struggling, don't want to go into the school, they want to cling to you, you may have to peel your child off. All right, let's see what's next, I don't even remember. My favorite part, my neuro nerd part. Okay, so what I want to get across is, there's no shame in anxiety. It's an automatic biological function. We all have an autonomic nervous system that receives information through our sensory system. That sensory system and input travels up to your spinal cord, to your emotional arm in your brain. It's also called your reptilian brain, or it's survival brain, only function of this part of the brain, which is the first part of the human brain to ever develop, and it's called your amygdala. If your amygdala gets triggered by your neuroception, that's your brain has this background program right now running. It's looking for signs of danger, signs of safety. We don't even know it, right? Because it's automatic. Now, if your amygdala gets triggered by some sensory something in your environment, you sense trouble immediately in a split second. I don't even know if it's a split second. Your body's going to get flooded with adrenaline and cortisol. And then you're going to go into something called fight, flight, or freeze. And it's your body's survival response. So anxiety is actually like this great life-saving thing that humans are hardwired with. When humans first start walking the earth, you had to be able to run or fight or hide for survival. But now in the modern age, this part of the brain, which sometimes we get stuck in, this part of the brain doesn't think. It only prepares you for survival and to react. That's why, how many of you have ever made great decisions when you've been really emotional? Some of you are laughing. I bet you've made some massively great.
Wonderful.
See, okay, I'm gonna pick on you now. All right. So when the amygdala goes off, then we're going to experience some serious stress reactions in your body. All right. So this is my favorite part to talk to. When I go into like 3/4 of the classroom in Springville, so I have to torture the kids with all this stuff. Because I don't think, I want them to learn it's not you, it's your nervous system. I want to change it from that student to that student's nervous system. What's it telling us right now about how it's reacting to this environment? Something's up with this environment, something's triggering something. Okay. So common symptoms of anxiety, you can read through some of it. So I'm gonna go with my favorite ones, all right? So if you go into fight or flight, what's gonna happen to your heart rate? Is it gonna go? Where's it gonna go? God, I need one of these for school. So your heart rate goes up. Now when your heart rate goes up, it's doing that for a biological reason. It's pumping blood. Anyone have any ideas where that blood's going? Your extremities, your arms and legs, to get you ready to run or fight. So that's where that tension starts coming in. So when I'm working with kids and I talk about feelings, I just don't talk about feelings. I want to know where you're feeling in your body, because that's your early warning system. So your heart rate's going to start going up. You're going to feel tension. Your hands might go into a fist. What might happen to your breathing? It's going to increase. It's going to get short and choppy. Now, the biological cool reason for that, okay, I get to do this neuro nerd stuff again, is it's pumping oxygen in that bloodstream into your brain. It needs to do it in these short bursts. Now, how many of you have ever noticed when you're anxious, you might get kind of nauseated or you have GI issues? Now, there's a biological reason for that. You might hear it, it's kind of gross. Should I? Okay, sorry, no. So, okay, how do I say this without being too bad? All right, so if you need to flee, you need to lighten your load. You need to lighten your load, exactly. Thank you. All right. So that's part of it, it's that lightening the load. So sometimes we have kids, right, when they get anxious at school, it's the struggle. Is this illness? Nerves. Is their nervous system reacting to something in the environment or something they're thinking? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if you ever go into flight, which could happen if you're ever in a horrible car accident and your body has to start shutting down, have you ever heard of that term cold feet? You know where that comes from? Because when your body starts doing, let's say you can't escape, you can't fight, you have to sit there, and people that are in severe trauma or abuse, They learn to disassociate and their bodies are still there, but your body starts shutting down all extremities, so you get tingly because the blood flow goes just to survival of your main organs. So this whole anxiety thing, stress response in the body, it's all automatic. But we can make it worse with what we tell ourselves in our brains also. All right, shall we see what's next? Okay, 5 anxiety triggers. Now, the amygdala, once the amygdala is going though, I should be sure to let you know. Once the amygdala is in full force, your ability to think, as we talked about, decreases a great deal. That's why you should never make any big decisions. If you're arguing with somebody, get the heck away from them. Okay, it's never going to end well, right? Because you're constantly getting this feedback that's making your nervous system dysregulated because they're dysregulated. How many of you have ever noticed your nervous system being dysregulated when you're around somebody anxious? When you're around somebody angry? Do you see how it's catchy, this whole dysregulation stuff? It's never helpful to push or do anything when somebody's in that state because they are reactionary survival brain and they're not thinking brain. The cortex gets unplugged. And that's why we do so many things that we wish we didn't when we're upset. All right, so genetic factors. Some of you probably can look back at your family histories and say, bingo, bingo, some of these things have showed up in different people, different generations. Chemical triggers, alcohol, marijuana, medication, external stress, what I was kind of hearing here, right? The more stress you have of demands. Now, the amygdala, when it was first started, right, to get you away from that saber-toothed tiger, now it doesn't know the difference between that and being late for work. How many of you have ever lost your mind when you're trapped in traffic and said and did things you go, oh my God, I can't believe you did that? Right? Okay. This is a big one that when I work with kids at school, there's self-talk. Any of you ever heard self-talk? Somehow they did some study and they said, we as humans do like 70,000 self-talk messages in our brain a day. Once again, background program, right? We're not even aware of most of them. How many of you notice if you have a child or you live with somebody and yourself, that sometimes your self-talk can get stuck in a negative loop? And it's hard to get it out. All right, so unrealistic demands. Some of us are kind of perfectionists. I'm going to get into a little bit of cognitive distortions in a few more slides. So once again, is this an actual danger or a mind worry that we get ourselves into? History, trauma. If you had a past traumatic event, the longer you're in trauma, the harder it is for your amygdala to learn to ever shut off. Our fight, flight, and freeze response was only supposed to help us through like minutes. But when you're somebody under chronic stress, if you're a war vet, you're somebody in a war zone, you're somebody who lives in a war zone in a house, your brain gets hardwired because you have to be in fight or flight for survival risk because you're dysregulated because of what's going on around you. And then you walk into school, and that stuff's not happening, but they can't shut it off. They're still reacting. Their nervous systems become hypersensitive. Sometimes our neuroception then gets damaged, and we freak out about tiny, small things that we wouldn't, right? But unless our brain got changed. Also, chronic stress, they have something called toxic stress from families like that, can have long-term health issues. How many of you have heard cortisol is an inflammatory? If you're under chronic stress, you're shooting cortisol through your body constantly. It has a very bad effect on your internal organs. All righty, listen, since I'm keeping everybody uplifted here, let's move to the next one. So risk factors. Okay, we probably should put my name up there, right? My daughter would. Okay. So history of mental health disorders in the family, once again. Do you come from a family where anxiety has been part of it? Once again, childhood abuse, trauma, severe. If you're somebody with severe illness and chronic health condition, does it make sense that you're going to be stressed a great deal? Right? Don't you have a ton of things to worry about? Substance abuse. If you're into illegal drugs and alcohol and you have all these problems, do you think that probably you're going to have an environment that's pretty stressful? And trying to secure if it's illegal drugs, that might add more stress to your life and the people around you. Being shy as a child is linked to social anxiety in teens and adults and low self-esteem. All right, next. Okay, so here's what I want some of you, I'm hoping for the takeaway, some of the takeaways. Some of us, when we fight anxiety, we make it far worse. So when you worry about getting rid of anxiety, you're signaling to your nervous system that you have something more to be anxious about. Calm anxiety by accepting it, that self-awareness. Tell yourself, it's just my nervous system kicking into high gear because I'm worried about something. It's my nervous system. My nervous system's reacting to something right now. No shame, no guilt, nothing. It's just the way it is. It's automatic. And this line I like. The thoughts you resist persist. Okay, fighting anxiety is what typically triggers a panic attack. So panic attacks sometimes, I heard that they're horrible. Some of them can be really bad. It's really scary. But fighting it can make it far worse. Sometimes you just have to ride through it and say, I'm just having a panic attack. I'm just having a panic attack. It will pass. It will pass. Self-discovery, I want you to know yourself or your child is, if they're starting to struggle with this, we got to get that word in there so they understand, oh, you look anxious. There's something going on right now your nervous system is reacting to. Can you feel it? Where do you feel it in your body? We want to start getting this education of getting a word on it. When somebody's having a panic attack or you're really anxious, remember, you're in this part of the brain, it doesn't think. We have to do something to pull back up here. So sometimes when we start putting words on things and different things, it makes you have to think again, and that can get you out of it. All right, let's see. Okay, the cycle of anxiety. I don't know if this will make sense for any of you. Is that there's usually a trigger event, something that we're anxious about that provokes anxiety. And then your body starts experiencing those fight, flight, freeze sensations, which do not feel comfortable, right? We don't like that. So then thoughts of fear and danger start entering your mind, and then we sometimes engage in avoidant behavior, which gives us short-term relief. Maybe you wanted to get a job somewhere and you're getting ready, you've got the job interview, and then you start feeling really anxious, and then you just said, no, I'll just stay at my current job. Bingo, right? You feel relief, but it's short term. Because what happened in the long term is you just trained your brain to use avoidance. And this will get hardwired, right? The more we avoid and we get that gratification of, oh boy, I feel a lot better, then we get stuck doing this if we don't stop ourselves. So the only strategy to distract yourself from your anxiety or to avoid things that cause it, you'll always be afraid of it because you've never learned to deal with it. Think about your child when they might crawl in your bed at night, right? So they're anxious, they don't feel good, their body's upset, can't quite tell you, but they know they're scared. They get in there, everybody feels better, parents get to sleep maybe, finally. And then they go off to their, it's daylight, and they're back to their little happy zone next night. I heard it sound. Bingo. Right in the mom and dad's room, and then do they learn to deal with it, or does it become a nightmare for the parents? All right, so we can get ourselves stuck in this anxiety cycle. All right, let's see. So self-talk, thought distortions that are, they say, I put fuel anxiety, I call it gasoline on fire. How many of you ever heard of catastrophizing? Okay. I catch the kids doing this quite a bit. I have to start teaching them this when I hear their self-talk. It's like, as soon as something goes wrong, nervous system starts going up, and this always happens, and this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen, I'm gonna die. I'm like, wow, that's a big leap from losing Uno. Then we have black and white thinking, that it's either pass or fail. Anything in between is horrible. So I like to drive kids crazy and go, how many minutes are in a day? Give them a calculator. So they look it up and we get to 1,440 because they try to tell me I had a bad day. God, it's like 9:35. You can't have a bad day yet. There's a lot of minutes left. And so how many minutes are in a day? So did you have a bad day or bad minutes? Okay, what's your evidence? So sometimes when you hear people making this goofy stuff, you actually, or yourself, you gotta stop yourself. What's my evidence? I'm a loser. Or I'm never gonna get math because I got, 30 wrong out of 100. Well, you got 70 right. Okay, so it's just trying to confront that because it can become a pattern. Overgeneralization. One thing happens, so of course that bad thing we expect to happen over and over again. Personalization. Somebody walks by you and they didn't say hi, and you immediately go, oh my God, what did I do? I must have did something. And bingo, nervous system's upright, and then you say or do something maybe you shouldn't. All right. Okay. This is what I'm hoping to give you something. If not, I guess you can yell at me and put a bad review. Okay. So strategies to calm the nervous system. Once again, I can't say it enough. Learning to verbally name the feeling. Help your child or whoever it is you care about or yourself. What is it you're feeling? I have kids get their feelings wrong so much. I don't twice now in the last 5 years I had some boy walk up to me, I got an anger problem. And I go, no, you don't, you have a disappointment problem. And because they didn't get it right. They're disappointed, and then bingo, what they told themselves, their nervous system flipped out. If you are anxious, take control of the energy. Remember, you're full of adrenaline if you are super anxious. Get up, walk, do something to start burning through it. If you stay in one place, you're going to really feel bad, right? So get up, do something, ride a bike, anything. If you get the child, if it's one of your kids to do something. The deep breathing, I often have kids, I don't do this. Deep breathing. No, that's not how you do it. So inhale through your nose. Okay, 4 seconds. Pull it up from your feet. Get really dramatic, right? Because that'll make it more interesting. Hold it and count to 7. And slowly exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds. So if I can get them to do it, this one's not so easy, but for you adults, you could probably do this. Maybe some of you do this if you have to go in and do something that you know is stressful. It has this calming effect on your vagus nerve, which is a big part of your autonomic nervous system. How many of you have your happy spot that you go to when you are really stressed out? If I have to go to medical tests or I know it's going to be painful or something like that, my strategy is to imagine how giddy I will walk when I leave this place. Maybe I'll sashay out of here. I don't know. All right. Being present. That's where you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Once again, you're trying to go from survival brain back up into thinking brain, and also to get you in the here and now. List 3 favorite things, categories, movies, food. That's once again getting you up here. So you can get yourself to visualize and think. Counting backwards, I didn't put up on here. Count backwards from a high number and skip by 3s. Or get the kids, if your kids count to 20, try to get them count backwards by 2s. Something where they actually have to see the number in their head and think. Because we want to climb back up here. Sitting with a pet, unless you have allergies, I suppose that wouldn't be a good idea. Okay. If you can find out your child's mantra, what they're telling themselves in their head, I'm just really curious. If I could say this, never ask somebody a point blank question, are you anxious? No. I know you are. You seem anxious. You seem worried. You seem nervous. You seem like you're pacing. If you describe what you see, it's sneakier. And then you just kind of back off and let it float in ozone. And they may respond to it. But at that word, we got to start getting them trained. If you're feeling, where do you feel it in your body? What's this feeling? Because sometimes they get it wrong. Okay, my son has, oh my God, he has horrible anxiety. He finally just got diagnosed with autism. I've known it for years, had to fight Waterford School so we can do it. And deep down knew this had to be the background program that was going on behind the scenes. And so recently he was diagnosed. And his anxiety is, the last 4 years, is debilitating. Can't get him out of the house. Okay? So I had him name his anxiety. And he's decided to call him Howie. I don't know why. So when he gets that way, I don't know, what's Howie telling you right now? Because I want to know what he's thinking, right? So we can start dealing with it. Does that make sense? How is Howie at predicting things? How is Howie done the last time you predicted if you ate something you were going to vomit? Did you get it right? We have to start whittling away, right? These cognitive distortions that can become set in stone in our brains. If you have a small child and they're anxious, have them draw their anxiety. Have them name it. Kind of takes it away from them, right? What's so-and-so telling you right now? I had a couple kids this year when they had separation anxiety. We went and they named their anxiety, and then we start talking. What's so-and-so telling you today? Oh, this guy, didn't he tell you that yesterday? Did it happen? No. So just trying to crack that and break it. Be aware of your thoughts. Talk to someone, right? How many of you have ever had moments in life, right? We're human. Life is stressful, isn't it? Being a parent is stressful, isn't it? Being a spouse, working, being a human, family member. Oh my goodness. Have you ever had those dark moments in your head where you get a thought stuck in your head and you just can't get it out? Not a good thing, is it? And sometimes the worst thing we do, right, is we keep it in there. Because then we can't reality test. Because sometimes you say it out loud and you hear it, and somebody else hears it and they go, what? It's not how I saw it. It's starting to deal with that. Keep your eyes open if you're having a panic attack or something else. When we close our eyes, we're disassociating. You're getting stuck in freeze mode. So you can see what is going on around you. You need to find a way to be here and present. Engage in healthy self-care. Make sure you have some me time. Avoid alcohol and other drugs. I mean, the short term, the beer, I don't feel as anxious. But then does the anxiety, what you're stressed out about, come back when you come down? Think of something funny. Engage in humor. Sometimes, how many times have you ever just laughed and released so many endorphins or something that it was a great experience? Alrighty. When to get help? When you feel like your worrying is too much and it's interfering in your work, your relationships, or other parts of your life. Sometimes anxiety can control your life or the life of someone you care about. When you stop or avoid doing activities you used to enjoy, you feel depressed. Once again, substances come in the way because sometimes, right, we want to self-medicate because the stress symptoms in our body are not comfortable and you want to find a way to numb them out. If your heart rate's going up, you're tense, you're getting tension in your jaws, your head hurts, that's your body response to something it's reacting to. Suicidal thoughts or behaviors, somebody says that. I know sometimes I have kids who tell me I want to die. We always got to explore it, right? And we never know. Sometimes I have kids that say it when they're disappointed or they're under stress and they don't want to die, they just want whatever's bugging them to stop. But with people that are getting older, I guess all people, right? We got to be really aware. How bad is this? You know, has this person been struggling for a while? Or I should listen to it. Types of treatment. A lot of times cognitive behavioral therapy that will work on the relationship between your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. They're all interconnected, that triangle. Exposure therapy, that's if you have specific phobia, right? And you, under the guidance, you get closer and closer to it until maybe you could do it and crack it. Somatic therapy is the one I'm starting to head to. Polyvagal therapy and somatic therapy, the bottom up idea that it's the nervous system and in the mind. We got to find a way to connect it. And then medication. All right, and then final thought, if I had one.
Can I give you about 2 minutes? I know, I'll give you more anxiety. Give me about 2 minutes.
Okay, this is the last one. Okay. Anyhow, you have it written down this, so I don't know if. For this one, you can kind of just look, some of it's what I've been telling you. The other one that I use a lot with the kids is what size is something? What size is the feeling? What size is this problem? So I use bump, hill, or mountain, just because it's a little easier. And then how can we go, because a lot of times kids will, or people will react to things like it's a mountain-sized problem, what you call them. Maybe it really was kind of a bump or annoyance. And just so we can start getting this measurement, I want people to think, right, is this is bad? Because I try to tell kids, you know, mountains when you get injured. You're hurt, you're bleeding, you're going to the hospital. This isn't a mountain. Okay, what are you telling yourself? I'm curious what you're telling yourself to make this into a mountain. So be detectives, sneaky. All right, apparently I'm out of time.
Sorry.
I forgot to set my clock I used for the kids, my visual timer, so I couldn't read time visual for myself. Because usually then it would go, get out, Mr. T. All right.
Thank you.
If there's anything you need, you can get a hold of me at Spring Mills through the email. They call me their name, like, you know, Jeffrey Thompson. That makes me think I'm in trouble. Jeffrey.Thompson@hbs.org. If there's anything you want, any kind of follow up on, or anything I can help you with, or if you just want to prank me, this was horrible. All right, thank you.
Thanks, the winner's here. Okay, wait. Oh, got your little raffle time. Speak to the microphone.